Today we're crocheting a granny square bag using 3 granny squares. You can make this bag as small or as big as you want, and you can use as many colors as you want. I just used 2, and I'll show you how I changed colors using these 2 colors. And I also made my strap shorter, so it's a shoulder bag, but you can make it longer to wear it crossbody. And this design is really good for a crossbody bag because it has that triangle cutout at the top, so it fits against your body perfectly. Just remember to make the strap a little bit longer. For the free written pattern, you can go to vivcrochets.com or just click on the link in the description box below. And if you do enjoy this tutorial, please leave a like or comment to let me know. Thanks so much, and let's get started. For this project, I'm using about 120 grams of medium weight yarn, and the yarn I'm using is Big Twist Favorite Cotton in the color cream and green olive. And I do recommend you use a cotton yarn just so the bag is less stretchy. And I'm just using the recommended 4.5mm hook, some scissors, and a yarn needle. First, I'll show you how to make a granny square, and if you already know how to make one, you can skip to the end where we fasten off. There's going to be some important information there before you start your next 2 squares. And I do have the timestamps labeled in the description to make it easier for you to jump over to that part. So you can start with whichever color you want. I'm going to start with the white. And first we're going to make a magic ring. And to make a magic ring, place the yarn over your hand with the tail end at the bottom. Then grab the yarn with your thumb, grab the top, and wrap it around 2 fingers to form an X. And you can hold it with your pinky. And then we're going to take our hook, and we're going to go under one side of the X, and then over, and grab the other side. And we're going to pull it through, and then we'll take the 2 fingers on our right hand and we're going to grab this entire thing, so including your hook, and we're going to pull it off of our fingers. And here is our magic ring. And we can pull on this tail end to make the magic ring a little smaller and easier to work with. And now we can start on our first round. To start every new round, we're going to chain 2. And to chain, yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook. Again, yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook. So here are our 2 chains, and now we can start working into the ring. And we're going to do a double crochet. To do a double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into the ring, yarn over, pull through, and you should have 3 loops on your hook. Then yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. So there's our first double crochet, and we're going to do another one into the ring. So again, yarn over, insert your hook into the ring, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and there's our second double crochet. Then we'll do 1 more double crochet. So here we have our 3 double crochets, and when 3 double crochets are in a row like this, we're going to call it a cluster. So now that we've done 1 cluster, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to do another cluster. So we're going to yarn over and do a double crochet into the ring. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So these 3 double crochets, again, it's called a cluster. And we're going to repeat this. So we're going to chain 2 and do another cluster into the ring. So there's our third cluster. We'll chain 2 and do 1 more cluster into the ring. And again, we'll chain 2. And now we should have a total of 4 clusters in our ring. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And next we'll take the tail end on the back and we're going to pull on it to close the hole in the middle. So grab your tail end and grab your last cluster and we're going to pull on it and close up the hole. And finally, we need to finish the round with a slip stitch. And we're going to be doing this at the end of every single round. And we're going to slip stitch to the very first stitch that we made. So let's look at our first cluster. And you can see the chain 2 that we did in the beginning. And right next to it is our first double crochet. So we're going to go under the V at the top of our first stitch. And we're going to do a slip stitch. And to do slip stitch, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on your hook. And tighten it. So there is our very first round. Now for round 2, this is how we're going to be starting every single new round. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to do a cluster into the space right below the chain. So we're going to yarn over and insert our hook into that space and do a cluster. So there's our cluster in the first space of the round. Next, we're going to chain 1. And we're going to skip over to the next space, which is this one right here. And in this space, we're going to do a cluster, chain 2, and a cluster all into that space. So let's do our first cluster. Then chain 2, and we can push over the first cluster to make room for our next one, and then go back into that same space and do your second cluster. And then we're going to chain 1 and move on to the next space where we'll do the same thing. A cluster, chain 2, and then another cluster, all into that space. Then we'll chain 1 and do the same into this next space. Again, that's a cluster, chain 2, and another cluster. And then we're going to chain 1 and move on to the next space. And this next space is the same as the very first space that we worked into. And you can see every single corner has a cluster, chain 2, and a cluster, but this space only has one cluster. So let's finish it by doing a cluster and then chain 2 into this space. And before we do our third double crochet, we're going to stop and use this last double crochet to change colors. So make sure you have your next color ready. And we're going to start a double crochet with our white yarn, but we're going to finish it with the green yarn. So we're going to yarn over, insert your hook into that space, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then we're going to pause. We're going to drop the white and then pick up the green and hook it onto our hook. And then we'll pull the green through these last 2 loops. And make sure you have a long enough tail in the green. It should be at least 4 inches. And to secure the tail, I'm going to double knot it with the white yarn. So now we'll work with the green yarn, but we're going to leave the white yarn attached. But make sure you pull it over to the right side so we don't accidentally get it caught in our stitches. Now with the green yarn, we're going to chain 2 and we're going to slip stitch to the first stitch of the round. So again, look for that chain 2 that we did in the very beginning, and right next to it is our first double crochet. Go under that V at the top, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop on our hook and tighten it. And here is our second round. Now round 3 is going to start off very similar. We're going to chain 2 and do a cluster into the space below. And then we're going to chain 1 and we're going to skip to the next space, which is this one here. And this space you can see is a side space. So these 4 spaces in the corners, those are the corner spaces. And then these are the side spaces along the sides of the square. And in the side spaces, we're just going to do 1 cluster. And then we'll chain 1 and skip over to the next space, and this one is a corner space. And in every corner space, just like last round, we're going to do a cluster, chain 2, and another cluster all into that corner space. So there's our first cluster. We'll chain 2 and do a second cluster into that space. And you can see how that forms a new corner. Then we'll chain 1, and the next space is going to be a side space, so we'll just do 1 cluster. And we'll chain 1, and the next space is a corner space, so we're going to do a cluster, chain 2, and another cluster. And we're going to be repeating this pattern all the way around. So we're going to chain 1, do 1 cluster into the side space, chain 1, do a cluster, chain 2, a cluster into the corner space, chain 1, and then do a cluster into the side space, chain 1, and we'll meet back at the end of the round. So once we've gone all the way around and we reach back to where we first started, we're going to complete this corner with a cluster, chain 2, and then finish the round with a slip stitch. But we are going to make sure that we carry the yarn across. From now on, make sure that you're carrying the yarn that you dropped earlier in your last cluster of every round. So after my chain 1, I'm going to yarn over, go into that final corner space, and then we're going to make sure we pick up the white yarn and loop it over our hook like that. and complete our double crochet. So it gets caught under the stitch. And we're going to complete our cluster, making sure that that white yarn is always over our hook and not under it. And you can see the white yarn is caught completely under that last cluster and it sticks out to the left of it. And then we're going to leave it here and we're going to do the same thing for the end of the next round. So after our cluster, we're going to chain 2 and slip stitch to finish the round as always. So slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, tighten it, and here is our third round. Now we're going to do our fourth round. It's going to be the exact same pattern as this round. So let's do that one more time. We're going to chain 2 and do a cluster into the space below. And we're going to chain 1, and the next space you can see it's a side space, so we're just doing 1 cluster. Then we'll chain 1, and the next space is another side space. So again, we'll do just 1 cluster. Chain 1, and the next space is a corner space. And we'll do a cluster, chain 2, and another cluster. And we're going to continue working around the square following that same pattern, where we'll do a chain 1 every time we move to a new space. And in the side spaces, only 1 cluster. In the corner spaces, we'll do a cluster, chain 2, and a cluster. And again, we'll meet back at the end of this round because we will need to switch back to our white yarn. So after going all the way around, we just have that last space to work into, and we're going to finish it with a cluster, chain 2, and slip stitch. But we are going to carry the white yarn up again. So make sure that when you do your first double crochet, you pull this white yarn and loop it over your hook, and then do your double crochet. And then we'll do 1 more. We are changing colors every 2 rounds, so with our final double crochet, we're going to switch back to our white yarn. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the space, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then drop our green yarn, pick up the white yarn, and we're going to yarn over and pull through those last 2 loops. And now we switched back to our white yarn, and we'll finish this round with a chain 2 and slip stitch. And there is round 4. And we're going to continue increasing the size of this granny square by following that same pattern we've been doing for the last few rounds. And make sure that for the end of every single round, we carry the yarn in our last cluster. So we're going to work in our white yarn, and we're going to make sure we carry the green yarn in the very last cluster of the round. And also remember to switch colors every 2 rounds. So just keep increasing your square until you get the size that you want for your bag. And to visualize the size of your bag, fold the square diagonally in half, like this, and this length will be the bottom of your bag, and it'll also be the side of your bag. So depending on how big you want your bag to be, just stop once you get your square to be that size. So here I've done 8 total rounds, and my square is about 19.5 centimeters by 19.5 centimeters. And this is where I'm going to stop increasing my square. So if you fold it in half diagonally, this is how wide the bag is going to end up being. So again, you can keep adding more rounds until you get that size that you want. But we're going to fasten off here. And to fasten off, so for the white yarn, we can just cut that off. And we can just leave a regular length, about 4 inches. And then for the green yarn, I'm going to be using this yarn tail to sew the entire bag together. So again, I'm going to fold it in half diagonally. And we're going to use this yarn tail to sew across here and then back across here. So usually to estimate the length of yarn that I'll need, I'll just double that. So that's across the top layer, and then we are going to sew the bottom layer. So this length, and then I'm going to double this length. So I'll just take my yarn and then double the length that I'll need. And then you also want to make sure you add a little extra just in case. So I have about 180 centimeters or 71 inches. And then I'll cut my yarn. And we're going to chain 1 and then pull through with our hook. And that should make a knot. And here is the first square of our bag. And now we're going to make 2 more squares, but we are going to start with the opposite color. So for this square, I started with the white, and then I did green, white, green. But for our next 2 squares, we're going to start with green and then go white, green, white. And for your 2 other squares, you can just chain 1 and cut off a regular loose end, about 4 inches. Pull through, tighten the knot. So here is the first square I made, and this one is the next square. So instead of starting with white, I started with green. And that's just so when we attach it together, it's not just a big block of the white yarn or a big block of the green yarn. So I feel like it makes it a little more balanced, but if you do prefer to do it all 3 identical squares, then you can if you want. And again, for the next 2 squares that you make, you don't have to leave a super long loose end. This one on the first square will take care of all of the assembly. So we can just cut off a regular loose end. So once we have our first square and then our next 2 squares, we can start to assemble our bag. To assemble our bag, we're going to take the first square that we made with the really long loose end and place it down with the loose end in the top right. We're going to make sure that it's facing right side up. So this is how it looked while we were crocheting with it in front of us. This side is the wrong side with all the loose ends. And then we're going to take one of the other squares and we're going to place it right above our first square. And we're going to attach the sides of the squares together along here. So we're going to take our yarn needle and we're going to thread this really long loose end into the needle. And you can just pull it through about halfway through the loose end. And you can use whichever sewing method you prefer, but I'm going to use the whip stitch. So first we're going to start by connecting the corners together. So we're always going to work into the top square first and then into the bottom square. So we're going to go over to the top square and we'll go down through that corner. So that corner space here, with our needle, go down through it. And then we're going to go to the bottom square and we're going to go up through that corner space and pull the yarn through. Now it's connected at the corner and we can move on to the next stitch. So the first stitch after the corner space is this one here. Again, we're going to go through the top square first. So we're going to go down and under that V of that first stitch. And then in the bottom square, we're going to go up under the V of the first stitch. Pull the yarn through. And then we'll move on to the next stitches. We'll go down and under the V, and then up and under the V of the next stitch of the bottom square. Pull the yarn through. And we'll move on to the next stitch. So this one here will go down under the V of the next stitch of the top square, and then up and under the V of the next stitch of the bottom square. Pull the yarn through. And now we're at a chain space, and we can just go down through the chain space of the top square and up through the chain space of the bottom square and pull the yarn through. And make sure you're tightening the yarn every time you go through because you don't want it to be loose along the seam. Now we can move on to the next set of stitches. So we'll go down and under the V of the next stitch of the top square, up and under the V of the next stitch of the bottom square. And we're going to just continue working along the sides of these two squares and connecting each stitch and each space. And in the chain spaces, we'll just connect them by going through the chain space of both squares. And after the final stitch, don't forget to also connect your corners together. And now these two squares are connected. Next, we're going to grab our other square, and we're going to place it right here, and we're going to rotate it, and we're going to sew across, connecting these two sides together. So the same thing, we're going to start by connecting the corners together, and we'll always go through the upper square first, and then the lower square. And after you connect the corners, we'll start connecting each stitch. And we're just going to work all the way across. And at the end of this side, again, don't forget to connect the corners. And now it should look like this. We're going to rotate it like this. We're going to flip this over. And we're going to fold all of the squares in half diagonally. So this will form the bag shape. And now we're going to continue using our loose end to sew across this layer of the squares. And we did already connect the corners, but we're going to go back through the corners again just to make the transition from this side to this side a little easier and so it doesn't bunch up. And then we can start going through each stitch and lining them up. And we're going to continue working all the way across, connecting this square with this square. And once we reach here, we're going to connect the corners, and then we're going to connect the corners of these two squares, and then work across the rest of the way, connecting these squares together. And I'll meet back with you once we reach the very end. So I've gone all the way across, and now I'm at the final corner. I'm just going to connect that corner one more time. And then we're going to make sure that we tie a double knot so the seam doesn't come undone. So just go under any loop near where your yarn is coming out. So I'll just go under this loop. And then we're going to pull the yarn through, not all the way, we're going to leave a little loop, and we're going to turn around and go through that loop with our needle. And then pull the yarn through and tighten the knot. And then we'll do that one more time for a double knot. Now we have our bag shape, and we can start on the strap. And for the strap, I'm going to use my white yarn. And we're just going to make a long rectangle. So we're going to start with a slip knot. And to make a slip knot, it's very similar to the magic ring. We're going to place the yarn over our hand with the tail end at the bottom. But we are going to leave the tail end under our thumb a little longer so we can sew the side of the strap to the bag. So we'll leave about 10 inches of yarn under our thumb, and then we'll grab the top, wrap it around 2 fingers to form an X. Then with our hook, and this part is a little different from the magic ring, we're going to take our 2 fingers out, and then we'll pull on these 2 ends to tighten the slip knot. So there's our finished slip knot, and we're going to do chains, and we're going to keep chaining until we get the length of the strap that we want. And I'll do a total of 65 chains. So here I have 65 chains, and it's about 40 centimeters. And remember to make it slightly shorter than you actually want it to be, because when you put stuff in the bag, it will stretch out a little bit. Now we can start the first row of the strap, and you can use whichever stitch you want. You can use double crochets, but for the strap I'm going to use single crochets. And to do single crochet, we're going to start by working in the second chain from the hook. So this one is the first chain from the hook, and this one is the second chain from the hook. So insert your hook into that chain, just go through the middle and under the top loop. And then yarn over, pull through, and you should have 2 loops on your hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. And that's a single crochet. Now we can move on to the next chain and do the same. So again, to do a single crochet, insert your hook into the chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops on your hook. And there is our second single crochet. And we're going to continue working along this chain, doing 1 single crochet into each chain. So I've just gone all the way across the chain and done a single crochet into every chain. And now we can start on our second row. And to start every new row, we're going to chain 1. And then we're going to turn. And now we're going to be working into these V's at the top of the stitches. So the first one is this one all the way on the right, this V here. So this is the chain we just did, and this is the first stitch we'll work into. So go under that V and do a single crochet. And then we'll go under the next V and do a single crochet. And we're just going to go across the row, doing a single crochet into each stitch. And once you get to the end of the second row, make sure you don't miss this stitch right here, the very last one. The edge should be straight when you do your last stitch. And here is the second row. And again, to add more rows, we're going to chain 1 and turn. And we're going to work into each stitch and do a single crochet. And that's how we're going to continue increasing the width of the strap, so you can work across and then add as many rows as you want until you get to the width of the strap that you want. So I did 4 rows and my strap is about 2.5 centimeters wide, and I'm going to fasten off now. And to fasten off, just like with the squares, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to cut our yarn, but we are going to make it a little bit longer so we can sew this side to the bag. So instead of just the regular 4 inches, I'll do about 10 instead. And then pull through with your hook and tighten the knot. And here is the finished strap. And now we can take the loose end that we left and thread it into our yarn needle. And we're going to sew each end of the strap to each corner at the top of our bag. So I'm going to flip it upside down. And then I'm going to hold the strap up to one corner like this. And we're just going to attach each row of the strap to that chain 2 space corner. So just go down through that corner and then over to the strap and go up the side of the strap and pull it through. Then we'll go back into the corner and then up the side of the strap a little bit to the left. And make sure you're pulling it tight every time. Then we'll go back into the corner and then into the side of the strap a little bit to the left. Back into the corner, into the side of the strap. And you can see it's not completely connected right here. We're going to go back and then into the very corner of the strap. Now it's connected and we can tie a knot to secure it. So just like we did earlier, we're just going to go under any loop near where our yarn is coming out, pull it through, leaving a loop on the other side, then go back and into that loop and tighten the knot. And we can do it one more time. Then we'll just do the same thing with the other side of the strap. And remember, we left the long loose end on the other side too, so we're going to use that to sew onto this corner. And if you're happy with your bag, the last thing to do is to weave in our loose ends. So let's just take one of these from the strap and thread it into our yarn needle. And we're just going to hide this loose end inside of our stitches. So since most of this bag is granny square, I'm just going to go into the granny squares, but you can hide them in the strap too. But to hide the loose end inside the granny stitches, I'm just going to go under the loops of these stitches. So just start by going under any loops in one direction. Like that. And then we can pull the yarn through. Just until it gets pulled all the way through. And then we can move the yarn down to this last round. And pull the yarn through. And then I don't want to hide my white yarn under the green stitches because they're more likely to show through. So I'm going to go back up to this cluster up here. So go under the loops and make our way up to this cluster and go under those loops. Pull the yarn through. And we're just going to keep going up and down these clusters and hiding the rest of our yarn. And once you've hidden most of it, we can just trim off the excess. And that loose end is hidden. And we'll do that for the rest of our loose ends. And our bag is finished. And that's all for this video. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thank you to channel members Katya, Sharon, Brasins, Jaymon, Amarachi, Dylan, Mai, Kayla, Taylor, Casey, Allison, Eilish, Nadine, Joy, and Stacy. You can become a member of this channel and have these little yarn ball badges next to your name whenever you comment, and other perks such as member shoutouts, early access to new videos, discount codes for my Etsy, help with any of my patterns, and connecting on social media. Thank you again to all my channel members, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.